All right, what day is it? I don't fucking know. It's my feet are all coffee, sticky. It's not even a phrase, but I'm sure some lady will be like, lady, I just spilled a bunch of coffee on the floor. And I used a bunch of paper towels to clean it up, and it's still there. And she'd be vibing to the oldies by now. All right. On what day are we? 25 days. Did you think you'd be doing this 25 days ago? Kids, I have a fucking pimple here. I wish I could go to the dermatologist and have him shoot cortisone in it. We're a pretty hot dermatologist, really. Oh, for sure. This lady could get. Anyway, she's kind of a bitch. Really? No. I just remember one time I was like, she's like, don't, whatever you do, don't pick pimples. I'm like, okay. But what do you do? Or she's like, don't pop them. Like, well, what do you do? Yeah, that's job security for you, lady. I'm like, well, what do you do if, like, you get one and she's like, then just call and we'll make an appointment for you and come in. I'm like, bitch, you know how long it takes to get into a doctor? She's like, well, we have openings. And I'm like, she's a bitch? No, she's not. She's a nice lady. Is she? Yeah, she just thinks her shit doesn't stink. Why? Because you should just know it's hard to get dermatologists in this world, and so they think they're better than everybody. Really? It's hard. Pimple popper, MD. Anyway, is it? Yeah, there should be more dermatologists in this world. It's like you should be able to go to any dermatologist anywhere in the world, or at least the United States, the developed world, whatever, and be able to get into a dermatologist that day with no insurance. And they just either that or they should just sell the cortisone. Let people just use it. Anyway, you done? How them marbles, kid? Like, lady, shut the fuck up. She'd be like, I want to hear all about your coffee toes and your fucking marbles. I'd be like, it's like boba. She'd be like, huh? I'd be like, hemorrhoids. They're like boba. They're like, like the balls. She'd be like, oh. She'd be vibing to the oldies, you stupid slut. Anyway, are you done? My feet are all caught. It's like cold coffee on my toes. Really? Yeah, it sucks. Anyway, let's do Kabbalists. Oh, fuck. All right, so there's Catalonia. They have a cool flag. I like their flag. Um, it's an autonomous community of Spain, designated as a nationality by the Statute of Autonomy. The territory is situated on the northeast of the Iberian Peninsula. So it's like here. A lot of like alien shit happens there. I don't know why. All right, where else? There's Girona. Where's that? It's like a city there. All right, so that's cool. So let's learn about Aziel of Girona. Well, there's Ezra Ben Solomon, but no one knows anything about that motherfucker. Dog, there's cold coffee. It's gonna fucking short out all my electronics. Are you worried about that? A little bit. What percentage of you is worried about it? Like at least 15%. It was just poor footwork. What can I say? Arabic. AZRL bin min IBR LTRS. Hebrew. ZRYL bin min ARH and LTRS. C1160 C1238. Also known as Ezrael of Girona, was the founder of speculative Kabbalah and the Jeronian Kabbalist school. He is known for implementing Neoplatonic thought into mainstream Kabbalistic tradition. Biography. What did he do? Contents. Ezrael ibn Menachem ibn Ibrahim LTRS. Arabic. Ezra equals background color. Yellow. AZRL bin min IBR LTRS. Hebrew. ZRYL bin min ARH and LTRS. C1160 C1238. Also known as Ezrael of Girona, was the founder of speculative Kabbalah and the Jeronian Kabbalist school. He is known for implementing Neoplatonic thought into mainstream Kabbalistic tradition. Biography.
Azrael lived in Menachem in the neighborhood Mount Taurus was born around 1160 at Gerona, Catalonia to the Al-Taurus family. His father Menachem was a minor rabbi at Gerona. In his early years, Azrael moved to southern France, where he studied under Isaac the Blind. Azrael later traveled across Spain, preaching his Kabbalistic views. However, this proved to be unsuccessful, with Azrael later stating that the philosophers believe in nothing that cannot be demonstrated logically. He later returned to Gerona, where he founded a Kabbalistic school. Amongst his main students were Nachmanides and Abraham Zacuto. The poet Meshulam of Gerona hails Azrael as the greatest Kabbalist of Spain, and Isaac the Blind later opposed Azrael's open propagation of Kabbalistic doctrines in wider circles. Theology. According to Azrael, the status and importance of the will of God surpasses all other attributes. He laid the foundation for the idea of Ein Sof by stating that God can have no desire, thought, word, or action, emphasizing it by the negation of any attribute. Azrael goes on to adopt a Gnostic approach, going as far as to say that all qualities of God are ascribed. Azrael investigates the relation of this Ein Sof to the universe, asking, has the universe been created from nothing? He explains no. Aristotle is perfectly right in saying that nothing can proceed from nothing. Moreover, creation implies a decrease in the creator's essence through subtraction, and that cannot be predicated of the Ein Sof, nor can the universe have existed eternally, as Aristotle asserts, because nothing is eternal except for God. In order to solve the problem of creation, Azrael recourses to the theory of emanation, which he develops as follows. The universe, with all its manifestations, was latent in the essence of the Ein Sof, in which, notwithstanding its infinite variety, it formed an absolute unit, just like the various sparks and colors that proceed from the one and indivisible flame potential in the coal. The act of creation did not consist in producing an absolutely new thing. It was merely a transformation of potential existence into realized existence. Thus, there was really no creation, but an absolute. The effluence was effectuated through successive gradations from the intellectual world to the material.
The fuck is an absolute? The world of emanation is the highest of the four worlds in which exists the Kabbalistic tree of life. It is also known as near to God. Bara follows it is known as the world of emanations, the world of causes, the Kabbalah, which is the spirit in this world is associated with the name of God. Let's read this one.
Absolute or absolute, also Alam Absolute. Literally, the world of emanation is the highest of four worlds in which exists the Kabbalistic tree of life. It is also known as near to God. Bira follows it. It is known as the world of emanations, or the world of causes. In the Kabbalah, each of the Sephirot in this world is associated with the name of God, and it is associated with the suit of ones in the tarot. Significance. Absolute is the realm of pure divinity. The four worlds of Kabbalah relate to the Kabbalistic tree of life in two primary ways. In Kabbalah, each of the 10 Sephirot of the tree of life.
The tree of life is contained in each of the four worlds. In this manner, they are described as one on top of the other, one on top of another, and in symbolic form by a diagram called Jacob's ladder. The tree of life can be subdivided into four horizontal sections, each representing one of the four worlds. Kabbalah socks. My feet are. I have coffee toes. It sucks.
In Kabbalah, each of the 10 Sephirot of the tree of life also contains a whole tree inside itself. The realm of Absolute is thus related to the top 3 Sephirot of the tree of life. These 3 spheres of Keter, Chokmah, and Bina are considered to be wholly spiritual in nature and are separated from the rest of the tree by a region of reality called the abyss. Origins. The word is derived from Ansel in Ezekiel 42:6. It was taken into Kabbalah via Solomon ibn Gabriel's Mekarei fountain of life, which was much used by Kabbalists. The theory of emanation, conceived as a free act of the will of God, endeavors to surmount the difficulties that attach to the idea of creation and its relation to God. These difficulties are threefold. The simile used for the emanation is either the so.
The act of creation involves a change in the unchangeable being of God. It is incomprehensible how an infinite and perfect being could have produced such imperfect and finite beings. A creatio ex nihilo is difficult to imagine. So let's learn about that.
Creatio ex nihilo, Latin, creation out of nothing, or nihilogamy is the doctrine that matter is not eternal but had to be created by some divine creative act. It is a theistic answer to the question of how the universe came to exist. It is in contrast to creatio ex materia and foundationalism, creation from matter resulting from logical aseity, also known as resultant ex accident logica. But modern foundationalism is cosmological with improvements from the 17th century viewpoint that are sometimes framed in terms of the dictum ex nihilo nihil fit or nothing comes from nothing, meaning all things were formed ex materia, that is, from pre-existing things. Creatio ex materia. Creatio ex materia refers to the idea that matter has always existed and that the modern cosmos is a reformation of pre-existing, primordial matter. It is sometimes articulated by the philosophical dictum that nothing can come from nothing. In ancient Near Eastern cosmology, the universe is formed ex materia from eternal formless matter, namely the dark and still primordial ocean of chaos. In Sumerian myth, this cosmic ocean is personified as the goddess Namu who gave birth to heaven and earth and had existed forever. In the Babylonian creation epic and Enlil, pre-existent chaos is made up of fresh water Apsu and salt water Tiamat, and from Tiamat, the god Marduk created heaven and earth. In Egyptian creation myths, a pre-existent watery chaos personified as the god Nun, and associated with darkness, gave birth to the primeval hill, or in some versions, a primeval lotus flower, or in others, a celestial cow, and in Greek traditions, the ultimate origin of the universe, depending on the source, is sometimes Oceanus, a river that circles the earth, night, or water. Similarly, the Genesis creation narrative opens with the Hebrew phrase Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'haaretz, which can be interpreted in at least 3 ways.
As a statement that the cosmos had an absolute beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. As a statement describing the condition of the world when God began creating. When in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was untamed and shapeless. As background information, when in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was untamed and shapeless. God said, "Let there be light."
Though option 1 has been the historic and predominant view, it has been suggested since the Middle Ages that it cannot be the preferred translation based on strictly linguistic and exegetically grounds, whereas our modern society see the origin of matter as a question of crucial importance. This may not have been the case for ancient cultures. Some scholars assert that when the author, S, of Genesis wrote the creation account, they were more concerned with God bringing the cosmos into operation by assigning roles and functions. Cretio ex nihilo in religion. Cretio ex nihilo is the doctrine that all matter was created out of nothing by God in an initializing act whereby the cosmos came into existence. The 3rd century founder of Neoplatonism, Plotinus, argued that the cosmos was instead an emanation of God. Emanationism was rejected by Jewish philosophers, as well as the church fathers and Muslim philosophers who followed. African traditional religions. African traditional religions tend to favor Cretio ex materia over Cretio ex nihilo, and it is absent in Akan, Achille, and Yoruba religions. Ghanaian philosopher Kwasi Wairedu has argued that some religions such as those of the Shona, Nuer, and Benayar want to affirm the notion of Cretio ex nihilo. Ancient Near East. Although ancient Near Eastern cosmology is read as invoking a process of Cretio ex materia, occasional suggestions have been made that Cretio ex nihilo can be found at least in some texts, including the Egyptian Memphite theology and the Hebrew biblical Genesis creation narrative. Hilber rejected these interpretations, viewing both as consistent with Cretio ex materia and instead suggesting that some passages in the book of Isaiah, the book of Proverbs, and the Psalms indicate a form of Cretio ex nihilo. The cosmogonical doxologies of the book of Amos also present a view of creation ex nihilo. Bakongo spirituality. In Bakongo religion, the Bakongo people believed that the world in its beginning was empty. It was an mbngi, an empty thing, a cavity, without visible life. Mbngi, also called Wasi and Pampa, was symbolized as a circle of emptiness. The creator god Zambi, along with his female counterpart called Zambesi, is believed to have created a spark of fire, called Kal-Nga, and summoned it inside of mbngi. Kal-Nga grew and became a great force of energy inside of mbngi, creating a massive fusion. When the mass grew too hot, the heated force caused the mass to break apart and hurl projectiles outside of mbngi. Those projectiles became individual masses that scattered about, and when the fires cooled, planets formed and life came to be. The Bakongo believed this was the process Zambi used to create the universe, with the sun, stars, planets, etc. The Bakongo referred to this process as Lukululamban Zambi, or God created and cooked dough. Because of this, Kal-Nga is seen as the origin of life, or Moyo Wa Mu-Nza, and the Bakongo believe that life requires constant change and perpetual motion. Thus, Zambi is also referred to as Kal-Nga, the god of change. Similarities between the Bakongo belief of Kal-Nga and the Big Bang theory have been studied. Unlike many other traditional African spiritualities, the creation beliefs of the Bakongo are compatible with Cretio ex nihilo. Christianity. Nicene Christian theologies hold to creation ex nihilo. The doctrine has been defended in Christian circles since the religion's infancy, receiving its first explicit articulation by Theophilus of Antioch into Autolycus. In a chapter entitled Absurd Opinions of the Philosophers Concerning God, he writes, as, therefore, in all these respects God is more powerful than man, so also in this, that out of things that are not he creates and has created things that are. Theophilus' statement is nearly identical to Epistle to the Romans 4:17. God, who quickeneth the dead, and calleth those things that are not, as those that are. Thus, there is evidence that creation ex nihilo was being discussed in at least some Christian theological circles by the 3rd century. In late antiquity, John Philoponus was its most prominent defender. Some theologians have proposed alternatives to Cretio ex nihilo, like the idea of God creating the universe from God's self, ex ipsi, which suggests the universe is similar to God. Others argue for creation from pre-existent matter, ex materia, implying the world does not rely on God for existence. The notion of Cretio ex nihilo underlies some modern arguments for the existence of God among Christian and other theistic philosophers, especially as articulated in the cosmological argument, as well as its more particular manifestation in the Kalam cosmological argument. Augustine of Hippo affirmed an allegorical interpretation of the 6-day account of creation in the book of Genesis. He argues that the number 7 is significant and serves as a symbol of the perfection of God's creative work. He suggests that the first 3 days of creation cannot be considered perfect because the sun was created on the 4th day. Additionally, he notes that the night of the 6th day is not mentioned in the biblical account. Augustine further contends that the notion of God resting on the 7th day is questionable, as God is characterized as possessing all forms of wealth and is eternally unchangeable. Thus, a change in state between the 6th and 7th days is deemed illogical. He emphasizes the concept of divine immutability and asserts that nothing can be added to the divine essence at any point in relation to the unity of the triune God worshipped in Nicene Christianity while recognizing the distinct persons within the Trinity. According to Ambrose of Milan, God's rest follows the creation of humankind because God rests in the human being, which allows for a relationship of love to be established. In this context, God's rest is understood as a realization of love for his creatures, which is further connected to the concept of redemption in Christian theology. Ambrose distinguishes a link between the rest of God and the rest of Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Adherents of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints do not believe, as Nicene Christians do, that God created the universe ex nihilo. Rather, to Latter-day Saints, God's act of creation is essentially an organization of pre-existing matter, or Cretio ex materia. Hinduism. The Chandogya Upanishad 6:2-1 declares that before the world was manifested, there was only existence itself, one and unparalleled. Sativa Ekamiva Vijayam. Swami Lakeshwarananda commented on this passage, saying, something out of nothing is an absurd idea. Islam. Most scholars of Islam, like Judaism and Christianity, hold the belief that God is the unmoved mover and creator. He did not create the world from pre-existing matter. However, some scholars, adhering to a strict literal interpretation of the Quran, such as Ibn Taymiyyah, whose writing became the foundation of Wahhabism and related denominations, hold that God fashioned the world out of primordial matter. Judaism. One of the earliest recorded articulations of the concept of Cretio ex nihilo is in the non-canonical Jewish text 2 Maccabees. In 2 Maccabees 7:28, the author writes, I implore you, my child, observe heaven and earth, consider all that is in them, and acknowledge that God made them out of what did not exist, and that mankind comes into being the same way. Some have argued against interpreting 2 Maccabees this way, and none of the books of Maccabees are included in the Jewish canon. In the 1st century CE, Philo of Alexandria, a Hellenized Jew, laid out the basic idea of ex nihilo creation, albeit inconsistently. Philo rejected the Greek notion of an eternal universe, maintaining that God created time itself. In other places, it has been argued that he postulated pre-existent matter alongside God. Later scholars, such as Harry Ostring Wolfson, interpreted Philo's cosmology differently, arguing that the so-called pre-existent matter was indeed created. Hasidism and Kabbalah. Sadia Gaon, a late 9th and 10th century Middle Egyptian Palestinian rabbi, Gaon, philosopher, and exegete, formally introduced ex nihilo creation into Jewish Tanakh interpretation with the Book of Beliefs and Opinions, the first systematic theology of Rabbinic Judaism. Today, religious Judaism asserts creation ex nihilo, although some Jewish scholars maintain that Genesis 1:1 allows for the pre-existence of matter to which God gives form. Hasidism and Kabbalah. Jewish philosophers of the 9th and 10th centuries adopted the concept of yesh mayin, something from nothing, contradicting Greek philosophers and the Aristotelian stance that the world was created out of primordial matter and or was eternal. Stoicism. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium c. 300 BCE, holds the belief that creation out of nothing is impossible and that Zeus created the world out of his own being. In modern science, the Big Bang Theory, in contrast to theology, is a scientific theory. It offers no explanation of cosmic existence but only a description of the first few moments of the existence of the current universe. See also. References. Citations.
Alright, well, that didn't explain anything.
The simile used for the emanation is either the soap sponge that emits spontaneously the water it has absorbed, or the gushing spring that overflows, or the sunlight that sends forth its rays, parts of its own essence everywhere, without losing any portion, however infinitesimal, of its being. Since it was the last named simile that chiefly occupied and influenced the Kabbalistic writers, Atzilith must properly be taken to mean irradiation. Compare Zohar, Exodus Utro, 86b. Atzilith assumed a more specific meaning, influenced no doubt by the little work Masakat Atzilith Mask of Nobility. For the first time, the four worlds are distinguished, Atzilith, Uriah, Yetzirah, and Ashea, but here too they are transferred to the region of spirits and angels.
In Yetzirah, the Shekhinah alone rules in Beriah, the throne of God, and the souls of the just under the dominion of angel of the presence in the Yetzirah are the creatures of Ezekiel 1 and the 10 classes of angels ruled by the Metatron. In the Asaya are the Ophanim and the angels that combat evil governed by Sandal 1.
The Zohar, Atzilith is taken to be simply God's direct emanation, in contradistinction to the other emanations derived from the Sephirah. No fourfold world is mentioned. Moses Cordovero and Isaac Luria were the first to introduce the fourfold world as an essential principle into Kabbalistic speculation. According to this doctrine,
The Atzirah represents the Atzilah represents the 10th Sephirot, the Beriah, the throne of God emanating from the light of the Sephirot, the Yetzirah, the 10 classes of angels forming the halls for the Sephirot, the Asaya, the different heavens, and the material world.
In contradistinction to the Atzilah, which constitutes the domain of the Sephirot, the three other worlds are called by the general name Pira. Later Kabbalists explain Atzilith as meaning excellence, so that according to them the Atzilah world would mean the most excellent or highest world. Correspondences.
The letter Yud in the T-gram thing, the Sephirah of Chachma, and hence the parts of Abel. The element of fire, the soul level of Chaya, the brain, Petach Eliyahu, the Shemona Esrei in the Shacharit prayer service, and the allegory of the teacher and the student, the first stage where the teacher has a flash of inspiration or an unexpanded concept that he wishes to give to the student, the fixed fire sign of Leo astrology within the Western mystery tradition, the classical element of fire, and the suit of wands or batons in other shit. Okay. As we were saying.
Works. Asriel's works are as. Asriel also wrote a number of shorter treatises. Treatises. Works. Asriel's work. The universe, with all its manifestations, was latent in the essence of the Ein Sof, in which, notwithstanding its infinite variety, it formed an absolute unit. Just like the various sparks and colors that proceed from the one and indivisible flame potential in the coal, the act of creation did not consist in producing an absolutely new thing. It was merely a transformation of potential existence into realized existence. Thus there was really no creation, but an Atzilith. The effluence was effectuated through successive gradations from the intellectual world to the material, from the indefinite to the definite. This material world, being limited and not perfect, could not proceed directly from the Ein Sof, neither could it be independent of God. In that case God would be imperfect. There must have been, therefore, intermediaries between the Ein Sof and the material world, and these intermediaries were the 10 Sephirot. The first Sephirot was latent in the Ein Sof as a dynamic force. The second Sephirot emanated as a substratum for the intellectual world. Afterward the other Sephirot emanated, forming the world, the material, and the natural worlds. But this fact of emanation does not imply a gradation in the Ein Sof, the flame of which is capable of igniting an indefinite number of lights. The Sephirot, according to their nature, are divided into three groups. The three superior forming the world of thought, the next three the world of soul, the last four the world of corporeality. They all depend upon one another, being united like links to the first one. Each of them has a positive and a passive quality, which emanates and receives.
Works, Sha'ar HaShol, the gate of the inquirer, an explanation of the doctrine of the 10 Sphirot, in question and answer form, with the addition of Azriel's personal commentary, Perush Sefer Yetzirah, commentary on Sefer Yetzirah, Perush Aggadot, a commentary on Talmudic Aggadot, Perush Tefillah, a commentary on the Jewish liturgy.
Receives. Work. Asriel's works are as. Asriel also wrote a number of shorter treatises, the most important of which is a large section of the partly preserved work called Derek HaEmunah and Derek HaKethira, the way of belief and the way of heresy.
All right, you done coffee toes? No, lady. Nachmanides. Ramban, bitch.
Moses ben Nachman, Hebrew, M.E. ben NMN, Moses son of Nachman, 1194-1270, commonly known as Nachmanides, NKMNDC, Greek, Nachman DS, and also referred to by the acronym RAMBAN, RMBN, and by the contemporary nickname Menastra Catalan, literally Maison top near the gate, C.S. True, was a leading medieval Jewish scholar, Catalan rabbi, philosopher, physician, Kabbalist, and biblical commentator. He was raised, studied, and lived for most of his life in Girona, Catalonia. He is also considered to be an important figure in the re-establishment of the Jewish community in Jerusalem following its destruction by the Crusaders in 1099. Name. Nachmanides is a Greek-influenced formation meaning son of Naaman. He is also commonly known by the Hebrew acronym RAMBAN for Rabbeinu Mabnmmn, or Rabbi Moses son of Naaman. His Catalan name was Benastra Caporta, also written Saporta or Tiporta, literally Maison top near the gate. Biography. Nachmanides was born in Girona in 1194, where he grew up and studied. Hence he is also called Moshe ben Naaman Girandi, or Moses son of Naaman the Giranan, and died in the land of Israel about 1270. He was a descendant of Isaac ben Reuben of Barcelona and cousin of Jonah Girandi, Rabbeinu Yonah. Among his teachers in Talmud were Judah ben Yakar and Nathan ben Meir of Trinquitael, and he is said to have been instructed in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, by his countryman Azrael of Girona, who was in turn a disciple of Isaac the Blind. According to the responsive,
His teachers
Nachmanides was born in Girona in 1194, where he grew up and studied. Hence he is also called Moshe ben Naaman Girandi, or Moses son of Naaman the Giranan, and died in the land of Israel about 1270. He was a descendant of Isaac ben Reuben of Barcelona and cousin of Jonah Girandi, Rabbeinu Yonah. Among his teachers in Talmud were Judah ben Yakar and Nathan ben Meir of Trinquitael, and he is said to have been instructed in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, by his countryman Azrael of Girona, who was in turn a disciple of Isaac the Blind. According to the responsa of Shlomo Ibn Aderet, Nachmanides studied medicine. During his teens he began to get a reputation as a learned Jewish scholar. At age 16, he began his writings on Jewish law. In his Mildemat Hashem, Wars of the Lord, he defended Alphase's decisions against the criticisms of Sirachia HaLevi of Girona. These writings reveal a conservative tendency that distinguished his later works and unbounded respect for the earlier authorities. In the view of Nachmanides, the wisdom of the rabbis of the Mishnah and Talmud, as well as the Geonim, rabbis of the early medieval era, was unquestionable. Their words were to be neither doubted nor criticized. We bow, he says, before them, and even when the reason for their words is not quite evident to us, we submit to them. Asifat Zekanim, commentary on Ketuvim. Nachmanides' adherence to the words of the earlier authorities may be due to piety, or the influence of the northern French Jewish school of thought. However, it is thought that it also may be a reaction to the rapid acceptance of Greco-Arabic philosophy among the Jews of Spain and Provence. This occurred soon after the appearance of Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed. This work gave rise to a tendency to allegorize biblical narratives, and to downplay the role of miracles. Against this tendency Nachmanides strove, and went to the other extreme, not even allowing the utterances of the immediate disciples of the Geonim to be questioned. Attitude toward Maimonides. Called upon, about 1238, for support by Solomon ben Abraham of Montpellier, who had been excommunicated by supporters of Maimonides. Nachmanides addressed a letter to the communities of Aragon, Navarre, and Castile, in which Solomon's adversaries were severely rebuked. However, the great respect he professed for Maimonides, though he did not share the latter's views, reinforced by innate gentleness of character, kept him from aligning himself with the anti-Maimonist party and led him to assume the role of a conciliator. Maimonides was 58 years old when Nachmanides was born. In a letter addressed to the French rabbis, he draws attention to the virtues of Maimonides and holds that Maimonides' Mishneh Torah, his code of Jewish law, not only shows no leniency in interpreting prohibitions within Jewish law, but may even be seen as more stringent, which in Nachmanides' eyes was a positive factor. As to Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed, Nachmanides stated that it was intended not for those of unshaken belief, but for those who had been led astray by the non-Jewish philosophical works of Aristotle and Galen. Note that Nachmanides' analysis of the Guide is not the consensus view of modern scholars. If, he says, you were of the opinion that it was your duty to denounce the Guide as heretical, why does a portion of your flock recede from the decision as if it regretted the step? Is it right in such important matters to act capriciously, to applaud the one today and the other tomorrow? To reconcile the two parties, Nachmanides proposed that the ban against the philosophical portion of Maimonides' code of Jewish law should be revoked, but that the ban against public study of the Guide for the Perplexed, and against those who rejected allegorical interpretation of the Bible, should be maintained and even strengthened. Due to the existence of three variant editions of Nachmanides' letter, there is some debate as to the contents of his proposed resolution. The Savaro manuscript reads as follows. Let a royal command issue forth from you as you become a single group and a lasting bond to destroy an upraised arm, to excommunicate, ban, and place under a curse every tongue speaking arrogantly which God will destroy. One who mocks the Agadah or opens his mouth against the Asnaptum, and those who engage in the study of the Guide in groups. For the great rabbi and author Maimonides has commanded not to publicize nor explicate it. Cultures in Collision and Conversation, Essays in the Intellectual History of the Jews, page 122, 2011. This compromise, which might have ended the struggle, was rejected by both parties in spite of Nachmanides' authority. Igarat HaKadosh. The book Igarat HaKadosh, the Holy Epistle, on the topics of marriage, holiness, and sexual relations was commonly attributed to Nachmanides, who supposedly wrote it for his son as a wedding gift. However, modern scholarship attributes it to a different author, perhaps Rabbi Joseph ben Abraham Jekatila. In this book, the author criticizes Maimonides for stigmatizing man's sexual nature as a disgrace to man. In the view of the author, the body with all its functions being the work of God, is holy, and so none of its normal sexual impulses and actions can be regarded as objectionable. Views on death, mourning and the resurrection. In Nachmanides' Torah Adam, which deals with mourning rites, burial customs, etc., Nachmanides sharply criticizes writers who strove to render man indifferent to both pleasure and pain. This, he declares, is against the law, which commands man to rejoice on the day of joy and weep on the day of mourning. The last chapter, entitled Shar HaGemel, discusses reward and punishment, resurrection, and kindred subjects. It derides the presumption of the philosophers who pretend to a knowledge of the essence of God and the angels, while even the composition of their own bodies is a mystery to them. For Nachmanides, divine revelation is the best guide in all these questions, and proceeds to give his views on Jewish views of the afterlife. He holds that as God is eminently just, there must be reward and punishment. This reward and punishment must take place in another world, for the good and evil of this world are relative and transitory. Besides the animal soul, which is derived from the supreme powers and is common to all creatures, man possesses a special soul. This special soul, which is a direct emanation from God, existed before the creation of the world. Through the medium of man it enters the material life, and at the dissolution of its medium it either returns to its original source or enters the body of another man. This belief is, according to Nachmanides, the basis of the levirate marriage, the child of which inherits not only the name of the brother of his fleshly father, but also his soul, and thus continues its existence on the earth. The resurrection spoken of by the prophets, which will take place after the coming of the Messiah, is referred by Nachmanides to the body. The physical body may, through the influence of the soul, transform itself into so pure an essence that it will become eternal. In this world, the sages apprehend through the Holy Spirit 7 Sephirot. In the days of the Messiah, the 8th Sephirot will be apprehended, and they hint to it. In the world to come, the apprehension will be complete with all 10 Sephirot, and they allude to them. Shardha Gemel, Nachmanides. Nachmanides thinks that at the coming of Messiah the knowledge is deeper and also the Kabbalah may be known with Holy Spirit with 10 Sephirot, while before this the Holy Spirit could achieve only 7 Sephirot. 10 Sephirot include Chakma, Bina and Keter also with the 7 because thinking with Messiah is very strong and all truth must be really known. Since we must be closer than they to the end, and perhaps even really close given the long duration of the exile that has already passed, perhaps the decree decreed upon him to conceal it has lapsed, because the underlying reason for it is null, namely, that it pertains to far-off days. Dan 8:26, because he said many will wander, Yeshatitu, and knowledge will increase. Dan 12:4, it is hinted to us from here that we may contemplate, Lishada, the end in this book and increase the opinions about it, when he says, but the enlightened will understand. Dan 12:10, we learn that when the end approaches, the enlightened will understand these hints. Nachmanides. Nachmanides gives much importance to the Messianic era, especially in relation to the end of the 4 exiles, the last of which is that of Edom identified in Rome. He considers many prophecies of the Tanakh concerning the Messiah and in particular the book of Daniel. Here he considers the exact moment before the Messianic revelation while admitting not to be completely aware of what should happen in every detail. It is however evident that divine knowledge will be widely spread and this has always been a topic of debate even among the Jewish wise men, the Chachamim, following the prophets and the rabbis of the Talmud. Commentary on the Torah. Nachmanides' commentary on the Torah, 5 books of Moses was his last work, and is most well known. He frequently cites and critiques Rashi's commentary, and provides alternative interpretations where he disagrees with Rashi's interpretation. He was prompted to record his commentary by 3 motives. 1. To satisfy the minds of students of the law and stimulate their interest by a critical examination of the text. 2. To justify the ways of God and discover the hidden meanings of the words of Scripture. For in the Torah are hidden every wonder and every mystery, and in her treasures is sealed every beauty of wisdom. 3. To soothe the minds of the students by simple explanations and pleasant words when they read the appointed sections of the Pentateuch on Sabbaths and festivals. His exposition, intermingled with Aggadic and mystical interpretations, is based upon careful philology and original study of the Bible. His commentary on the creation of the world describes the heavens and the earth being created out of a non-corporeal substance. Now listen to the correct and clear explanation of the verse in its simplicity. The Holy One, blessed be He, created all things from absolute non-existence. Now we have no expression in the sacred language for bringing forth something from nothing other than the word bara. Created. Everything that exists under the sun or above was not made from non-existence at the outset. Instead He brought forth from total and absolute nothing a very thin substance devoid of corporeality but having a power of potency, fit to assume form and to proceed from potentiality into reality. This was the primary matter created by GT. It is called by the Greeks highly, matter. After the highly He did not create anything, but He formed and made things with it. And from this highly He brought everything into existence and clothed the forms and put them into a finished condition. As in his preceding works, he vehemently attacks the Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle, and frequently criticizes Maimonides' biblical interpretations. Thus he assails Maimonides' interpretation of General 18:8, asserting that Maimonides' preferred understanding is contrary to the evident meaning of the biblical words and that it is sinful even to hear it, while Maimonides endeavored to reduce the miracles of the Bible to the level of natural phenomena. Nachmanides emphasizes them, declaring that no man can share in the Torah of our teacher Moses unless he believes that all our affairs, whether they concern masses or individuals, are miraculously controlled, and that nothing can be attributed to nature or the order of the world. See further on this debate under divine providence. David Berger has argued that Nachmanides did subscribe to the existence of a natural order. Next to belief in miracles, Nachmanides places 3 other beliefs, which are, according to him, the Jewish principles of faith, namely, the belief in creation out of nothing, in the omniscience of God, and in divine providence. Nachmanides, in this commentary, often fiercely criticized Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra, particularly regarding Ibn Ezra's negative attitude towards Kabbalah. Nevertheless, he had tremendous respect for Ibn Ezra, as is evidenced in his introduction to the commentary. Over time, Nachmanides updated his commentary in at least 250 places, particularly after moving from Spain to the land of Israel. These updates are attested to in different versions of his commentary which survived in manuscript. Disputation of Barcelona, 1263. Nachmanides, first as Rabbi of Girona and later as Chief Rabbi of Catalonia, seems to have led a largely untroubled life, when well advanced in years. However, his life was interrupted by an event which made him leave his family and his country and wander in foreign lands. This was the religious disputation in which he was called upon to defend his faith in 1263. The debate was initiated by Pablo Cristiani, a Jewish convert to Christianity, who had been sent by the Dominican Master General, Raymond de Pinayefort, to King James I of Aragon, with the request that the king order Nachmanides to respond to charges against Judaism. Pablo Cristiani had been trying to make the Jews convert to Christianity, relying upon a reserve his adversary would be forced to exercise due to fear of offending the feelings of the Christians. Pablo assured the king that he would prove the truth of Christianity from the Talmud and other rabbinical writings. Nachmanides answered the order of the king, but asked that complete freedom of speech should be granted. For 4 days, July 20th, 24, he debated with Pablo Cristiani in the presence of the king, the court, and many churchmen. The subjects discussed were: Cristiani argued
whether Mashiach had appeared, whether Mashiach announced, whether the Mashiach announced by the prophets was considered as divine or as man born of human parents, whether the Jews or the Christians were in possession of the true faith. My feet feel like cold coffee.
Argued, based upon several Maggadic passages, that the Pharisee sages believed that the Messiah had lived during the Talmudic period, and that they ostensibly believed that the Messiah was therefore Jesus. Nachmanides. The subjects discussed were: Christiani argued, based upon several Maggadic passages, that the Pharisee sages believed that the Messiah had lived during the Talmudic period, and that they ostensibly believed that the Messiah was therefore Jesus. Nachmanides countered that Christiani's interpretations were distortions. The rabbis would not hint that Jesus was Messiah while, at the same time, explicitly opposing him as such. He further said that if the sages of the Talmud believed that Jesus was the Messiah, then most certainly they would have been Christians and not Jews, and the fact that the sages of the Talmud were Jews is beyond dispute. Nachmanides proceeded to provide context for the proof texts cited by Christiani, showing that they were most clearly understood differently than is proposed by Christiani. Furthermore, Nachmanides demonstrated from numerous biblical and Talmudic sources that traditional Jewish belief ran contrary to Christiani's postulates. Nachmanides argued that the biblical prophets regarded the future Messiah as a human, a person of flesh and blood, and not as divine, in the way that Christians view Jesus. He stated that their promises of a reign of universal peace and justice had not yet been fulfilled, that since the appearance of Jesus, the world had been filled with violence and injustice, and that among all denominations the Christians were the most warlike. The creator of heaven and earth resorted to the womb of a certain Jewish lady, grew there for 9 months and was born as an infant, and afterwards grew up and was betrayed into the hands of his enemies who sentenced him to death and executed him, and that afterwards, he came to life and returned to his original place. The mind of a Jew, or any other person, simply could not tolerate these assertions. You have listened all your life to the priests who have filled your brain and the marrow of your bones with this doctrine, and it has settled into you because of that accustomed habit. You would never accept them. He noted that questions of the Messiah were of less dogmatic importance to Jews than most Christians imagine. The reason given by him for this bold statement was that it was more meritorious for the Jews to observe the precepts under a Christian ruler, while in exile and suffering humiliation and abuse, than under the rule of the Messiah, when everyone would perforce act in accordance with the law. As the disputation seemed to turn in favor of Nachmanides, the Jews of Barcelona, fearing the resentment of the Dominicans, entreated him to discontinue, but the king, whom Nachmanides had acquainted with the apprehensions of the Jews, desired him to proceed. The controversy was therefore resumed, and concluded in what was considered a complete victory for Nachmanides, who was dismissed by the king with a gift of 300 gold pieces as a mark of his respect. The king remarked that he had never encountered a man who, while yet being wrong, argued so well for his position. An alternative text reproduced by Julius Eisenstein in his Observation, quoted by Charles Burchagel in his edition of the collected writings of Nachmanides, has the king saying that he never saw a man with no legal training argue a case so successfully. The Dominicans, nevertheless, claimed the victory, and Nachmanides felt obligated to publish the text of the debates. From this publication, Pablo selected certain passages which he construed as blasphemies against Christianity and denounced to the head of his order, Raymond de Pinayafor. A capital charge was then instituted, and a formal complaint against the work and its author was lodged with the king. James was obliged to entertain the charge, but, mistrusting the Dominican court, called an extraordinary commission, and ordered that the proceedings be conducted in his presence. Nachmanides admitted that he had stated many things against Christianity, but he had written nothing which he had not used in his disputation in the presence of the king, who had granted him freedom of speech. The justness of his defense was recognized by the king and the commission, but to satisfy the Dominicans, Nachmanides was sentenced to exile for 2 years and his pamphlet was condemned to be burned. He may also have been fined, but this was lifted as a favor to then Benicio Porta, who according to some authorities was Nachmanides' brother. The Dominicans, while Dan, through Pope Clement IV, they seem to have succeeded in turning the 2 years exile into perpetual banishment. Other scholars believe that the identification of Benastra Porta with Nachmanides is incorrect. If so, then there were actually 2 people who were found to be blasphemous in the same time period and location. In Jerusalem, Nachmanides left Aragon and sojourned for 3 years somewhere in Castile or in the southern part of the Kingdom of France. In 1267, seeking refuge from Christian persecution in Muslim lands, he made Aliyah to Jerusalem. There he established a synagogue in the old city that exists until the present day, known as the Rampant Synagogue. Nachmanides then settled at Acre, where he was very active in spreading Jewish learning, which was at that time very much neglected in the Holy Land. He gathered a circle of pupils around him, and people came in crowds, even from the district of the Euphrates, to hear him. Karaites were said to have attended his lectures, among them Aaron ben Joseph the Elder, who later became one of the greatest Karaite authorities. Although Greeks writes that there is no veracity to that, it was to arouse the interest of the local Jews in the exposition of the Bible that Nachmanides wrote the greatest of his works, the above-mentioned commentary on the Torah. Although surrounded by friends and pupils, Nachmanides keenly felt the pangs of exile. I left my family, I forsook my house, there, with my sons and daughters, the sweet, dear children I brought up at my knees. I left also my soul, my heart and my eyes will dwell with them forever during his 3 years stay in the Holy Land. Nachmanides maintained a correspondence with his native land, by means of which he endeavored to bring about a closer connection between Judea and Spain. Shortly after his arrival in Jerusalem, he addressed a letter to his son Naaman, in which he described the desolation of the holy city, where there were at that time only 2 Jewish inhabitants, brothers, dyers by trade. In a later letter from Acre he counsels his son to cultivate humility, which he considers to be the first of virtues. In another, addressed to his second son, who occupied an official position at the Castilian court, Nachmanides recommends the recitation of the daily prayers and warns above all against immorality. Death and burial. Nachmanides died in the Holy Land after having passed the age of 70 or 76. Different traditions suggest that he was buried in Haifa, Acre, Hebron, or in the cave of the Rampant in Jerusalem. Works. Nachmanides, as above, was a leading Torah scholar of the Middle Ages, authoring major commentaries on Torah and the Talmud. Further, as a possum, he wrote standalone works on halakhic topics, as well as works on mysticism, science and philosophy. Commentary on Torah. As detailed above, Rambam's commentary on the Torah, Biur Parash al-Torah, is considered a leading work in the genre. It was his last, and his best known. As outlined, he often critiques earlier commentaries, especially Rashi, Ibn Ezra and Rambam, and incorporates Kabbalistic teachings. This commentary also reflects his love of Eretz Yisrael. Talmudic commentary. Ram is referred to as Chidushei HaRambam. The commentary reflects his depth of knowledge and his deep respect for the legal authorities that came before him. It is not structured as running commentary on the Talmud. Instead, it focuses on specific parts of the Talmudic discussion. In approach, it fully utilizes the Tosafist dialectical style, and systematically integrates this with the classic Sephardic teachings. It thus bears a distinct similarity to the writings of the Tosafists. Here, though, it will often provide a different perspective on a variety of issues. It is also heavily influenced by the teachings of Provence. Other works. Nachmanides was a leading and prolific scholar. His output, as outlined, spanned halacha, mysticism, science and philosophy.
Nachmanides' known halakhic works after the model of Isaac Alfasi are Mishpatei HaCherem, the laws concerning excommunication, reproduced in Kolbo, Hilchat Bedika, on the explanation of the lungs of slaughtered animals, cited by Shimshon ben Zamak Duran in his Yavin, Shmuel, Torah HaAdam, on the laws of mourning and burial ceremonies in 30 chapters, the last of which, entitled Shar HaGemel, deals with eschatology, Constantinople 1519, and frequently reprinted. Nachmanides' writings in the defense of Shimon Kayera and Al-Fasi also belong in the category of his Talmudic and halakhic works. These writings are Milhamat Hashem, defending Al-Fasi against the criticisms of Zechariah Halevi of Gerona, published with the Al-Fasi published with the Al-Fasi Venice 1552, frequently reprinted, separate edition Berlin 1759, Sefer HaZehud, in defense of Al-Fasi against the criticisms of Abraham ben David, Rabad printed with Abraham Madola's Shiva in Naim Leghorn 1745 under the title Makase U Magan Venice 1808. Hasagot, Constantinople 1510, frequently reprinted in defense of Simeon Kayera against the criticisms of Nachmanides' Sefer HaMitzvot, Book of Precepts, ethical, mystical, and philosophical works, Derasha, sermon delivered in the presence of the King of Castile, Sefer HaGalua, or Sefer Ketz HaGalua, on the time of the arrival of the Messiah in Azara de Rossi's Mayor, Inayim, Imre, Bina, chapter 43. Is that how that works? And frequently reprinted. No, that doesn't even look real. Igeret HaMusar, ethical letter addressed to his son in the Sefer HaIra, or Igeret HaTeshuva of Jonah Garandi. Igeret HaChema, letter addressed to the French rabbis in defense of Maimonides, with the Talmud Chachma of Joseph Del Medigo. Vekuach, religious controversy with Pablo Cristiani in the Mekamat Chova Perush Eo commentary on Job.
A collection of responsa are also commonly attributed to Nachmanides. They may in fact have been written by his student Shlomo ibn Adira. Sadat HaTefillah, a Hebrew manuscript described to Nachmanides, is similarly likely by Eliezer of Worms.
Meshulam de Peara.
References. References. Other than the fact that he was active as late as 1200, Meshulam ben Shlomo de Pierre was a 13th century Hebrew poet in Catalonia. Other than the fact that he was active as late as 1260, as his final known poem celebrates the Mongol conquest of Palestine in 1260, and that he lived in Girona, nothing is known for certainty about his life. He may have been a relative of the Hebrew poet Shlomo ben Meshulam de Pierre, who died after 1417. 50 of his poems survive to the modern day. He was regarded as a poet of great talent by fellow Jewish poet Abraham Bidersi, scholar of medieval Spanish Jewish poetry. Hayim Sherman called him among the most original of Spanish Jewish poets. In spite of de Pierre's respect for Maimonides, de Pierre's poetry criticizes Maimonides' philosophy, and he aligned himself with the beliefs of Jewish philosopher Nachmanides. His poetry distances itself from the older Hebrew tradition of poetry influenced by Andalusian Arabic poetry, and shows influence from the Occitanian troubadour style of poetry. Meshulam ben Shlomo de Pierre was.
Alright. Are you done? No, we're gonna do something new, kids. We're gonna learn. We're gonna try. Let's see. We're gonna go to Chabad. Go to Yiddish page, decline.
What does Ameke mean? Ameke is something so pleasurable that it could revive the dead or add years to one's life. Meke is a Hebrew word that means giver of life. In common parlance, you can use this term to refer to something that's refreshingly easy, such as the commute to work on legal holidays, or the multiple choice test to renew your license. You can also refer to something pleasurable, such as a freezing cold bubbly seltzer, or watching your children playing nicely, as Ameshe. We refer to all kinds of things as mekes, including trivialities. Yet, it's important to remember that we refer to GD as the true meke, for he alone is responsible for giving and taking life. We eagerly await the arrival of Mashiach, when GD will revive, the meke the dead, and bring our world to a place of perfection. Oh, what a meke that will be!
All right, I mean that's cool, but what the fuck? Pure joy, delight, or profound relief. Something that revives you. Stemming from the Hebrew Chai life is the blessing of a moment of pleasure, revitalization, often used with oi to convey the feeling. Revitalization, life giving. Literally, it means a giver of life. Amachaye. Is that how it said? It is now bitch. Alright, are you done? Let's do a debate. What's the debate? Yo, dog, within Judaism, can you please give me like a clarification on all the different souls? How many souls do we get? There's like a soul for Shabbat, and there's your animal soul, and there's your Jewish soul. So, like, give me the souls for a non-Jew. Give me a soul for a Jew who's halakhically Jewish. Give me the soul that comes up when you awake. All that bullshit. All right, let's clean this up and make it clear Jewish and not mystical word salad. I'll give you the mainstream Jewish map of souls, especially as it's explained in Chazal plus Kabbalah plus Chabad, without exaggeration. The short answer: a Jew normally has one soul with multiple layers. On Shabbat, an extra spiritual expansion is added. There is also an animal life force, but that's not a separate holy soul. Now, let's break it down properly. The 5 levels of the Jewish soul: one soul, 5 layers. This is the classic Jewish model. Zohar, Ari, Tanya. Nefesh, action soul. That's the lowest soul. Drives behavior, habits, physical actions connected to mitzvot and actions. Let's see if this works, if I can just have it read to us. I know probably people want me to read it, but I just want to see if it's possible. Oh, it is possible. Dog, this shit's taking too long, though. Dog, what's taking so long? Okay, there's. Hold on. Why is it so difficult for this shit? It. Whoever. Stupid. Alright, let's. Damn, bitch. Huh? Oh, fuck you. Oh, this is so stupid. These people at these companies don't want to help anybody. Fuck this shit. Terrible. Manage extensions. More extensions. This shit sucks. This app store is so just. Just the worst. The App Store is so bad. It makes so much money, and it's so bad. It's so bad. It is terrible. I can't believe how absolute shitty just technology is. It's so bad. Let's try this bitch again. Fucking stupid bitch. The five layers of the Jewish soul. One soul, five layers. This is a classic Jewish model. Zohar, Aritanya, Nefesh, action, soul. Lowest level drives behavior, habits, physical actions connected to mitzvot as actions. Everyone has a level active at all times. If you're awake and doing stuff, this is always on mind. Ruach, emotional, moral, soul, emotions, character traits, conscience, love, fear, anger, compassion, moral struggle lives there. When you're feeling guilt, inspiration, empathy, ruach. Neshama, intellectual, spiritual soul, thought, understanding, God consciousness, Torah, learning, prayer with depth, awareness of meaning when you're learning Torah and getting it, neshama. Chaya, living will, transcendence, usually not consciously accessible, deep will, self-sacrifice, faith beyond logic, shows up in moments of Mezerat Nefesh. Example, Jews choosing Judaism over persecution. Yechida, absolute oneness, essence of the soul, totally united with God, revealed only in extreme moments or Mashiach era. This is your core Jewish spark. Important. These are not five separate souls. They are five dimensions of one soul. The animal soul, Nefesh ha-Bahamit. Yes, Jews also have this drives, hunger, ego, sex, survival instincts, neutral, not evil. Same basic force, life, all humans have. Judaism's goal is not to kill it, but to elevate it. You are tired, horny, hungry, competitive, animal soul. You choose how to use it. That's a Jewish soul. The Shabbat soul, Neshama, Yetiera. This is where people get confused. You do not get a new soul. You get an extra spiritual expansion, more joy, peace, spiritual sensitivity. Challah said, a neshama yatir is given on Shabbat. What that means practically, more capacity for pleasure without guilt, more openness to holiness, less inner resistance. It leaves at Motzei Shabbat, why Havdalah exits. So when you're awake, sleeping, etc. Mainstream Judaism says when awake, nefesh plus ruach plus neshama are active. When asleep, higher levels partially withdraw. That's why sleep is 1/60th death. Dreams come from mixed sources, not prophecy by default. Non-Jews versus Jews, briefly, no nonsense. Non-Jews have a divinely given soul. Jews have an additional covenantal Jewish soul. This is about mission, not worth. Rabbi Sachs stressed this constantly. Clean summary. Save this. One Jewish soul. Five levels. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. One animal soul, biological drive. Shabbat equals an expansion, not a new soul. Awake versus asleep, level shifting, not soul switching. Alright, is that the end of your fucking story? No. Are you done? Alright, we got my feet have coffee. Alright, well, what do you want to learn? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? Everyone in Israel, every Jew, everyone who wants to be Jewish needs a kosher conversion, and I would make it more difficult than it currently is. What do you want me to do about it? What is it currently? Generally 2 years. I would expand that to 7 years. Why? Because if you gotta want it, would you have to go through it? Fuck no. I'm fucking perfect. But it's really just living in an orthodox fashion. So sure, I mean everybody should have to go through it. So do you? I mean, if everybody else is doing it, I'll do it. All right, is that the end of your story? There's so much coffee that I spilled just a full glass of coffee. Who's drinking coffee out of a glass? I actually drink it out of a solo cup, a generic solo cup. Why? Why the fuck not? All right. So, is that the end of your story? No. What else you want to talk about? Jewish souls? Well, did you talk about um, Kabbalah? Yeah, we learned. Who would you learn? About Ramban. He was born when Rambam was 56 years old. Is that the end of your story? No, it's not. All right. You want to take on any fucking long traditions of Judaism today? No. You sure? Um, sure. All right, but how do we know that? There's nothing about this in the Bible. This is just like made up stuff. Great pushback. That's exactly the right Jewish question. Let's be precise and honest, not hand wavy. Short answer, no BS. The Bible Tanakh does not spell this out in a technical system. The 5-level soul model is not explicit in the Torah the way Kashrut or Shabbat is, but it is also not made up. It is a later conceptual framework built from biblical language, preserved through Masorah tradition, and developed by Chazal and Kabbalah. Now let's prove that carefully. What the Bible actually says about the soul. The Torah uses multiple soul terms, but never defines them philosophically. Creation of Adam. Bereshit 2:7. God formed man from dust of the earth and breathed into him nishmat chayim, breath of life, and man became a nefesh chaya. Already here you have nefesh, neshama, ruach appears elsewhere. The Torah uses different words for inner life, but does not systematize them. Not clearly assumes the diagram. Example: intellectual versus life force language. Nefesh, desire, appetite, life. My soul, thirst. Ruach, mood, courage, spirit. A broken spirit. Neshama, God awareness, the soul God gave. These are used differently, consistently across Tanakh. That alone shows the Bible does not treat soul as a single flat thing. So where do the 5 levels come from? Answer: post-biblical, but pre-modern Judaism. Talmud, Baruch, Nida, etc. Midrash, Zohar, 2nd century tradition written later. Ari, 6th century Sfat. They are doing what Chazal always do: take biblical language and turn it into a working model. Just like the 39 melachot of Shabbat are not listed in the Torah, laws of tefillah and details are not explained in the Torah. Oral law itself is not written in the Torah. Yes, Judaism says that's how revelation works. This is made up or interpreted. This is the key distinction. Not God told Moshe there are 5 souls. A verse that says nefesh equals actions, ruach equals emotions. Yes, a received interpretive tradition built over centuries, treated as metaphysical language, not biology. Multiple models exist. Rambam versus Kabbalah. Rambam basically agrees with your skepticism. Important point. Rambam did not accept the 5-soul mystical model. He talks about one rational soul, uses psychology, ethics, intellect, downplays metaphysical layering, yet Rambam is 100% Orthodox Judaism, meaning Judaism allows multiple soul models. So what is the honest Jewish position? Here it is, cleanly. The Bible is minimalist about metaphysics. Chazal believed deeper structure existed. Kabbalah gives one symbolic map. It is authoritative within its tradition, not empirical fact. You are not a heretic for saying this is a model, not literal anatomy. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs explicitly said this kind of thing. Bottom line, the sentence you're looking for: the Torah does not give a technical theory of the soul. Later Jewish tradition developed symbolic models based on biblical language to explain human experience and religious growth. That's mainstream honest Judaism, not apologetics. All right, was that the end of your fucking story? No, I have a pimple here and I have a pimple here, and they hurt like motherfuckers. And I'm doing everything I can not to fuck with them. Really? Yeah. Why? Because you're not supposed to. Why? Because it can cause infection and all kinds of stuff and ruin your fucking life. How about that? Does it ruin people's lives? Yeah. But some people make amazing fucking comebacks. Really? Yeah. Like whom? You might be fucking witnessing one of them, bitch. You're fired. Go fuck yourself.